listen, I don't want any more bullshit.
Everybody all right? Everybody got your ranting and raving and bitching and moaning and cussing out everybody in the Colts organization? Have you got it out? Have we gotten out of our feelings yet to where we can look at every fucking thing with facts, logic, and reason? Because I'm not saying that I don't understand if you was fucking hot based on how this goddamn season ended in 2021. That was a fucking complete and utter clusterfuck. It was fucking embarrassing. It was a travesty, and it was not fucking acceptable. And I think we all saw Jim Irsay felt exactly the same way. But here's the deal. If we've got all our feelings out the way, now we can look at this shit surgically. We can look at it like a scientist, and we can analyze and say, we're going to take this bitch apart piece by piece. What do the Colts need to do? Starting with the biggest piece. You know it and I know it. Today, let me tell you, without any fucking feelings, without getting all in my emotions, without any biases, without any axes to grind, let me tell you the answer to the $28 million fucking question, okay? Here's what the Colts should really do with Carson Wentz in 2022. All right? Let's get to it. But before I do, let me be a gracious host as always and shout out to the bullshit-free gang representing all over the fucking world in every country on this planet. Let me welcome you back. Or if it's your first time here, let me welcome you to the one and only number one NFL uncensored podcast on planet Earth. Often imitated but never duplicated, always controversial, always entertaining, and quite frankly, preternaturally. I love 10-cent words like that. Preternaturally, straight up with no chaser. The world famous, or to some infamous, bullshit-free Colts podcast. The only podcast on the planet and the only place, my friend, where you can hear all things interesting and worth talking about when it comes to our beloved Indianapolis Colts. But here, baby, you get it with no coach speak, no spin, no PR, no political correctness, and most importantly, 100% without any fucking bullshit. I'm your host, Harkon Ajala, at your motherfucking service as always. And now that I got all the cursing and introduction out of the way, let's get down to the question of the day. Because this is what everybody's talking about, right? It's crazy because the season started off with every fucking body talking about this because Carson came in with the narrative and you all know what it is. He was broken. He was beyond redemption. He could never be fixed. He was completely trash. He was a waste. He was a bust, etc., etc. You know, he's a prima donna and his teammates didn't like him and he was selfish and all this other bullshit, right? That was the narrative at the beginning of the season. So all the talk was about Carson Wentz coming to the Colts, and we end the season talking about Carson Wentz as well. So look, there's all kinds of people out there with all kinds of conflicting narratives and conflicting biases and agendas, and some people that just love him no matter what he does, and some people that just hate him no matter what he does, and most of the people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You got the national pundits who are chasing clicks and views and all of this, along with a lot of people local too. There's a lot of bloggers and podcasters and what have you, just chasing clicks, views, and people to listen, so they're saying outrageous shit, etc., etc. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty and look at this shit with cold, calculating facts, logic, and reason, all right? And like I said, I'm going to answer the question today, what the Colts should really do with Carson Wentz going forward into 2022. So let's get down to it. But before we do, really quickly, I'm not going to draw this out because I'm as excited to get to this shit as I know you are. Very quickly, if you're still listening right now, I know one thing about you. You're a motherfucking pimp. So I want you to take your pimp ass finger, smash the like button below so that the algorithm can share this podcast far and wide. with other cool-ass motherfuckers like yourself. I asked you to make sure you share it with other people who would enjoy it. Make sure you're subscribed. And down below, if you want to support the podcast, there's 3 ways that you can donate to us. You can pick one, $50, $20, $15, $10, $5, even $1 will help. And for the people who want more, for the people who are the day one complete pimp-ass Colts fans extraordinaire, because you demanded it, you can join the 100% bullshit-free Colts podcast Patreon and get access to content, discussions, polls, live streams, and everything that nobody else can get. All right? So with all that out of the way, all the housekeeping set aside, let's get down to the nitty fucking gritty. Or, as I love to say and you love to hear me say, let's chop it the fuck up. All right. Let's start this off. Let me get something out of the way, all right? Let me give you a disclaimer. Because here's something that almost nobody else will do. I haven't heard anybody else really do it. But this is the Bullshit Free Podcast. I keep it real. I keep it 100. I keep it unbiased as much as possible. So, I ain't like most motherfuckers, right? So I'm just going to tell you right up front that I may have had a bias, and I might still have a bias, because I expected Carson Wentz to come to Indianapolis and play much better than he had in Philadelphia, and to be a viable starting quarterback, a viable franchise quarterback when he got here to Indianapolis, to a better team with better structure, a better coaching staff, a better organization, etc., etc. So I'm getting that out of the way up front. And because of that, I was extra strenuous at really going back and looking at everything purely based on objective facts, etc. Okay, obviously, whenever you start talking about sports, there's going to be some opinion in there. You can't be 100% objective, but I'm looking at all of this with no emotion and no real dog in the race, okay? So let me tell you right up front, I'm not 100% sure if Carson Wentz will be the quarterback starting day one, 2022, okay? And I'm not 100% sure if he should be the starting quarterback day one, 2022. But what I am very sure about is how the Colts should go about making that decision based on not motherfuckers' feelings, not motherfuckers' cognitive biases, not confirmation bias, not collector's bias, not because somebody wants to own the Eagles fans or own the Colts fans or own the liberals or own the conservatives, because, yeah, that type of crazy shit bleeds into fandom as well. I see it all the time on Colts Twitter. None of that bullshit. We're just going to look at it the way it is, okay? So let me start by telling you this. Here's what bothers me about Carson Wentz. Here's what really bothers me. I'm not sure that Carson Wentz doesn't have this problem, that he simply has always been, this happens a lot with athletes, especially quarterbacks, right? The motherfucker's been the best person on the field by far, by leaps and bounds his whole life, right? And so rightfully so, he develops a high level of confidence and a high, strong self-concept about himself as a quarterback, right? This makes sense. I mean, you want that in a quarterback. It has to be there. And all his life, there has been reason for it to be there. He has dominated. He's been the best player on the field. The problem that can happen with guys like that, quarterbacks, athletes, could be any position, but especially quarterbacks. The problem is that you get into the best of the, you get into the arena with the best of the best of the best of the best of the best, right? The top 1% of 1% of 1% of players in the world. And now, maybe you ain't the fucking best guy on the field. Maybe you're not the most talented quarterback in the NFL. Maybe you're not so head and shoulders above everybody else that you can just basically go out there and make it happen no matter what. That you don't have to adjust your game, that you don't have to improve some elements of your game, that you don't have to work on fixing some of your flaws or mistakes or errors. You with me? Sometimes a motherfucker's too confident for their own good. They're far better in their mind than they actually really are. And the problem that creates, and this is what bothers me, because I think it's possible this is what's going on with Carson Wentz. The problem that creates is you can never convince the motherfucker that they need to make some changes, that they need to somehow improve on what they're doing, that they need to consider doing things differently, that they need to have someone come in and help them get better, change up some of the things they do. See, they get stuck in, well, I do it like this. You know, you heard Carson talk about this even after the season in his press conference. He's like, well, I'm going to stay aggressive. You know, it's just who I am. It's just what I do. I don't like hearing shit like that. But see, not just from Carson Wentz. This is what bothers me about a lot of people in and throughout sports, as well as life. You see it in coaches, you see it in GMs, you see it in players. So what kind of, and we'll talk about this when I talk about Chris Ballard and Frank Reich. But this is what kind of bothers me a little bit about Ballard, especially. Motherfuckers get sold on their way of doing it, and it becomes dogma. See, it becomes not that this is necessarily the best thing to do in this situation, but this is what I do. You feel me? This is how I do it. And this is what I believe in, regardless of whether the feedback from reality is telling me this ain't the fucking thing to do. This ain't the best way to go about it at this particular time. See, motherfuckers get locked into, well, I build a team like this. This is my philosophy on building a team. Well, sometimes your philosophy may not be the best one based on the situation at hand. But again, that's getting off into something else. You understand what I'm saying when I talk about Carson Wentz. I get the feeling, and what bothers me and worries me about Carson is that he's too inflexible to actually make the changes. And the fucked up, crazy, sad part about that is Carson Wentz has the tools to be a top 5 quarterback, a top 5 elite quarterback. Some of y'all will say, no, fuck that. Yeah, he does. He has all the tools, the arm, the athleticism, the height, all that shit. The ability to throw on the move and all of that. Some of you say, well, he's not accurate enough. I beg to differ. Now, let me tell you why. Because if you go back and you watch the games, you watch his tape, you watch his video, and this is one of the great things about having like Game Pass, because you can go back and watch all the games. Wentz is accurate, plenty accurate, when his footwork is correct. When his footwork and his throwing mechanics are correct. When his footwork and his throwing mechanics are hot fucking trash, that's when the inaccuracy sets in. Now you can argue about, well, he doesn't process fast and all that. That may very well be, but I'm telling you, not every fucking quarterback that's elite is the fastest processing quarterback, etc. I'm telling you that he has the tools to be a top 5 elite quarterback. But, and this is a big but, I don't know if he has the will and the humility to go out and fix the things that hold him back from that. I hope I'm wrong, but that's kind of the feeling I get. And that, if that's the case, then he's not fixable. Some people say, well, you're 6'7", you know, he's not going to be fixed now. I hear what you're saying, and I'm telling you, yeah, he can be. People don't usually change, but they can change. It's just that they usually don't, and that's what we're talking about here. If he decides to go in and work on the things that cause him the problems, he can do so. It's just a matter of will he. Now, all that being said, that's what bothers me about him. But let's look at what really happened. First off, all to get Wentz the fuck out of here. He's a bum. He's no good and all that. Almost all of that shit happened because of the last 2 games. And look, rightfully so, the last 2 games he was atrocious, especially the Raiders game. I still contend he was worse in the Raiders game than he was in the Jags game, because in the Jags game, I mean, his whole team let him down. His offensive line was getting fucking bum rushed and, thrown around like rag dolls. They were embarrassed. Motherfuckers were dropping passes. I mean, the whole team 100% shit the bed, as the phrase and the saying goes, in that Jags game. But those 2 games are the worst games of the season. But listen, guys. Again, we're not talking about emotion here. We're not talking about whether you like him or not, or you like his stance on vaccinations, or you like his stance on religion. None of that bullshit. You think he's a crazy-looking, ugly dude. We're setting all that aside, okay? You can feel however you feel about that stuff. But setting all that aside, that's just the last 2 games he was trash. Here's the deal. Up until those last 2 games, he was absolutely fine, beyond fine. As a matter of fact, this can't be argued. The man ended up number 10 in total QBR for the 2021 season. Now, lest you dismiss that, before you get ready to start arguing and shit and dismissing that, let's just say this. Here's the thing with statistics. Motherfuckers want to, have their cake and eat it too, and people want to take statistics and bend them or cherry pick the statistics that prove the point they want to prove or disprove the point they want to disprove. You feel me? Here's my thing. You can argue about QBR and all that other shit, but here's the truth. Every quarterback in the NFL is rated the same in the QBR ratings. So, like, if you want to tell yourself that a guy's a fucking bum and he just, somehow lucked into being number 10 out of 30 plus in the league over 17 game season, I mean, that's a good long sample size, 17 games. He's playing all kinds of defenses, all, different levels of teams. Let's remember, the Colts beat the 49ers on the road this year. Carson, showed out in that game. They should have beat the Ravens on the road. I count that as a win for Carson because he did everything he needed to do in order to win, including even after the fucking defense gave up 3 straight touchdown drives in like the last 8 minutes. He marched the team down the field and got him in position for the game-winning 37-yard field goal, and fucking Hot Rod was injured and missed it. He did everything he was supposed to. They beat the Patriots. Patriots were red hot. They beat the Patriots. People say he was terrible. He was 5 of 12. I mean, he only threw the ball 12 times. And if you go back and watch the game, because I did, of those 12 that he threw, he connected on 5. There were 3 hardcore drops. They catch those 3. He's 8 of 12, and that is, 70% almost. My point is that's too small a sample size to say he was trash. Here's what I'm telling you. Across the 17 games of the season, he was fine. He was above average, and he was number 10 in total QBR, including those last 2 games. What would he have been if he hadn't played those last 2 games, or if he played decent? But I'm not trying to play the what if game. I'm saying, hey, with those included, he's number 10. He's top 10 in the league. Now, for context, he was 28 in QBR in 1 year ago. So the man went up 18 spots in a year. So, I mean, you can't pick and choose when the stats matter. The stats are what they are, right? The man went up 18 spots to 10. So, if he gets better next year, he would creep into the top 10. Could he be top 7, top 6, top 5 maybe? If he plays better next year. I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm saying he played a lot better than he did with the Eagles. The Eagles said it was him, not them. Okay. As a country friend of mine used to say, that fucking dog won't hunt. Anyway, let's look at something else. Let's talk about those last two games. Here's something that some people don't want to talk about for a whole lot of different reasons. Some of it, because people got this weird fucking political thing about COVID and what have you. And it's like if you say it had an effect on somebody, some people have feel some kind of way about it because they got some weird agenda, whatever. Okay, here's the deal. Anybody that's had COVID will tell you this. If you had any kind of symptoms, that motherfucking shit don't go away just because you test negative. Like your ass is, your ass is weak. You ain't 100% for a couple of weeks. Let's keep in mind those last two games. Like he just had COVID like 2 days before he played in the Raiders game and the Jags game. So you can call it an excuse or what have you. I'm just telling you that based on what we know, based on what we've seen, he wasn't at his best for those two games. So it's reasonable to assume that has something to do with his trash-ass performance in those two games. Not just saying, just write him off. We don't have to write him off. He's still number 10 in QBR, including those last two games. Now, he also had no offseason, no training camp. All right? He wasn't even healthy for the first 5 or 6 games. No. Also, look, motherfuckers can argue about it and say it has nothing to do with it, but the lack of weapons on the offense cannot be dismissed, okay? I'm not saying he couldn't have used the ones he had better, particularly Hines, but let's just keep it real, They are woefully understocked. Now, all those things in mind. Some people say, "Oh, here you go with making excuses for Wentz." I'm not making fucking excuses. I'm just telling it like it is. I've heard some people call it being a Wentz truther. For real? Oh, you making excuses trying to come up with some reason? No, he's top 10 in total QBR in the league. That's the truth. You can argue about it or whatever and try to say that it doesn't mean anything, but it means something, right? Because it's all the quarterbacks are judged the same, rated the same. Anyway, it's not like, you look at the QBR ratings, you're like, oh, well, number 2 is fucking Taylor Heineke, or number 2 is Zach Wilson, so you know something's wrong with it because he's bad. You look at the top 10 QBR. Let's go look at them. Number 1, Aaron Rodgers. Number 2, Tom Brady. Number 3, Justin Herbert. Number 4, Matthew Stafford. Number 5, Patrick Mahomes. Number 6, Josh Allen. Number 7, Kyler Murray. Number 8, Ryan Tannehill. Number 9, Dak Prescott. Number 10, Carson Wentz. Where's the fucking lie? Where's the lie? Which of those quarterbacks that I just named off are trash? And you're like, oh, that tells you something's wrong. That tells you something's wrong. Where's the lie? Let's look at the bottom 10. Justin Fields at 31, Zach Wilson at 30, Sam Darnold 29, Trevor Lawrence 28, Baker Mayfield at 27, Davis Mills 26, Ben Roethlisberger 25th, Jared Goff 24, Taylor Heineke 23rd, Daniel Jones 22, Matt Ryan 21. Where's the lie? Right? Are any of those Hall of Fame level? And he's like, oh, that proves the shit is trash. It is what it is. So I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you what it is. So all that taken into account, here's what the Colts should do. Here's what they should do with Carson Wentz. All right? I'm telling you from no bias, no emotions, and no shit like that. Just from what's best for the Colts. Here's what they should do with Carson Wentz in 2022. If there's any way they can get Aaron Rodgers, they can make some kind of deal to get Aaron Rodgers or Danger Russ Wilson. You cut Wentz's ass, bring them in, and go after fucking Lombardi, right? It is what it is. It is what it is. Now, maybe maybe if you could make a deal for Derek Carr that doesn't kill you, doesn't kill your draft capital and all that, maybe if you could make a decent deal for Derek Carr, you move on from Wentz. Let him go. You say, hey, we feel like we've upgraded. Good luck. Or you keep him as a backup since you kind of got, you got to pay him $15 million anyway, but you're not going to keep him as a backup and pay him $28 million. So you move on. Maybe Derek Carr. But you have to really look at that shit all, look at everything. But if you can't get Rodgers or Wilson or maybe Derek Carr, then here's what you need to do. Number one, get some fucking weapons, okay? You're going to need them for whatever quarterback is going to be here. Whatever quarterback's going to be a starter, because here's the truth. If it ain't going to be Rodgers or Wilson or maybe Derek Carr, then whoever you have playing at quarterback, if it isn't Carson Wentz, there ain't going to be measurably better than Carson Wentz. See, that's the thing that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. Who the fuck are you going to get that's better? How are you going to upgrade? So if you get somebody you feel like, well, it's lateral or it's close, or maybe we feel like maybe they could be slightly better, or maybe just not as high a ceiling, but not as low a floor, you're going to need some fucking weapons. You better get them. You feel me? Okay. Next, demand, and I mean demand. If I'm Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, no matter what, I demand that Carson Wentz see a sports psychologist over the offseason and work with a QB guru, Tom House or whoever, whatever motherfucker you want, to work on fixing his footwork and his mechanics. Period. That would be non-negotiable. Now, they shouldn't have to demand that. If Carson Wentz wants to be the guy, he should be doing that shit on his own. And if he doesn't, I've said this before, if he doesn't do it on his own, that gives credence to my thought process that he's not a guy that just thinks he's too good for his own good. Does that make sense? But whether he did or not, if I'm fucking Frank Reich or Chris Ballard, I'm like, look, this is non-negotiable. You got to do this or we're moving on. Period in the story. Now, the next thing they should do, again, can't get Rodgers or Wilson or maybe Carr. Here's what I'd do. Bring in a veteran quarterback to full-on compete with Carson Wentz and make Wentz win the starting QB1 spot. Bring in a veteran quarterback who has some upside. The one in my mind, this might shock some people, I believe they should bring in Mitch Trubisky. Bring in Mitch Trubisky. Why? Because I believe Mitch Trubisky can still be a very effective starting quarterback if you put the shit around him and you get him in a good game plan. Listen, the same way Tannehill was reborn, I'm a firm believer that if Trubisky gets a chance in the right situation, and the right situation would be one like the Colts, if he gets a chance to be a starter, he can resurrect his career much like Ryan Tannehill has done. And I'm not saying that because I think Mitch Trubisky is the second coming of fucking Patrick Mahomes, okay? I'm on record. You can go back and check, and I'm on record. I said at the time the fucking Chicago Bulls were out of their fucking minds to trade up all that capital to take a guy who was fucking unproven like Mitch Trubisky, and they passed up guys like Patrick Mahomes to do it, okay? But all that being said, if you go back and you actually look at what Trubisky did in Chicago, he's actually pretty good. And he could, I believe, I'm a firm believer, he could blossom and flourish into a damn good starting quarterback that you could win a championship with, yes, in a place like Indianapolis. So, can't get Rodgers, Wilson, or maybe Carr? Bring in Trubisky And I say somebody like him, but I don't really see anybody else out there like him. But bring in Trubisky or at least some other veteran quarterback and make Wentz compete to and win the starting QB1 spot. That, I believe, will do wonders for Wentz, for the team, and etc. Now, if Wentz grumbles or like, well, I don't feel like I should, fuck them then bench his ass, cut him, do whatever. This is the fucking big leagues. So, some people say, oh, he doesn't want to compete. Well, find out. Say, look, here's the deal, man. You believe you're the best, right? You believe you're the best quarterback for this team? Well, then go out and win the spot. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay? And finally, and again, what all you want in that competition is to find the best quarterback. If Trubisky or, God help us, Marcus Mariota or somebody like that, but it also could be somebody like a Teddy Bridgewater, God help us, or somebody like that. If they beat Wentz out, then they beat Wentz out, and maybe you capture lightning in a bottle, you strike gold or what have you. Now those last two guys, I don't believe you will. I mean, they're just fucking guys. Marcus Mariota, people tell me, he's like, I watched him for years when he played for the Titans. I mean, he's just not good. Period. Anyway, he's way worse than Wentz in every measure. But anyway, last thing to do, if you're bringing him back, like I said, make sure he sees a sports psychologist and a QB guru to work on. Bring in a vet QB. Make Wentz win the starting position. Get him some more weapons on offense. You got to, get that left tackle situation locked down. In retrospect, I mean, without a doubt, one mistake I would say with Ballard, they should have signed Leno, definitely. But it is what it is. That's another podcast we'll talk about later. Last but not least, let's say he's coming back. He sees a sports psychologist, works with a QB guru. You bring in a vet to compete with Wentz. Wentz beats the other guy out and wins the starting QB1 spot. When he steps on that field, God damn it, go to his strengths in the play calling. Call the fucking plays to his strengths. Like we've all seen it. Call him to his strengths. When he rolls out, when he's on the move, when he's bootlegging, right? We know where his strengths are. Play to his fucking strengths, Frank. Jesus. Play to his fucking strengths, Frank, when you call the plays. Jesus fucking Christ. Now, this is going to be part of whole nother podcast, but I'm telling you, I still believe Frank Reich needs to give up the play calling duties. Not because he's not a great play caller. I believe he can be one of the best in the league. But what I don't believe is he can be one of the best play callers in the league and be the head coach. So, like, if you want to call the plays, step down, become the offensive coordinator, and let somebody else take over as head coach. Shit, let fucking Flus be the head coach. Get a different defensive coordinator, and you be the OC and call the plays, Frank. If that's what's most important to you. I fucking blame Doug Peterson for this shit. Because, see, he wanted to call the fucking plays, so he didn't let Frank do it. Frank never got to call the plays in Philly, so now Frank becomes a head coach, so he wants his chance to call the fucking plays. So he's calling the fucking plays, and he had Sirianni as his offensive coordinator, and Sirianni didn't get to do it. So then Sirianni gets a head coaching job, and you guess what? He calls the fucking plays. You see what I'm saying? Because these motherfuckers never got their chance. But that ain't it, Chief. And we can see it ain't it by what happens on the field, because I see this all the time in these games. First 15, 20 plays are fucking amazing. And then when things aren't going well, you don't see Frank. I don't see his genius in play calling. It's like they just start fucking dropping back like backyard football. Drop back, everybody go out, and I'll find who's open. That's what a lot of their plays look like. Go back and look at it. That ain't what Carson Wentz is best at, for sure. But, I mean, I don't know. Can you get Frank to do that? I don't know. But that's what needs to happen. If you can't do it, Frank, you got to find some way to make the best play calls for Reich, just like every other player. I mean, not Reich, for Wentz. Just like you would do every other player. The coach's number one job is to put the players in the best position to succeed and win. Period, end of story. So, I know there's people out there who, are in their feelings and, they're in their, get rid of Carson Wentz at all cost bag. And I'm telling you, that ain't going to happen because it ain't the right fucking decision. If you can't significantly upgrade from Carson Wentz, and significantly upgrade means bringing somebody who you feel automatically puts you on contender level. That's what I'd be looking at. Like, which quarterback could we drop onto the exact team we had last year, no new weapons, etc., and they would make us a contender? There's only a couple of those out there that we can honestly say, right, that might be available at this point that we know of, Rodgers or Wilson. You can't really say that with Carr. I mean, it's possible, but can't really say that for sure with Carr. If that's not available, then you got to bring in a vet to compete with Wentz, and then whichever of those wins the competition, you got to move forward with that quarterback. But you would prefer it be Wentz, but if it isn't, it just isn't. Whatever you do, my feeling is if you can't get Rodgers or Wilson or maybe Carr, then you're going with Wentz again, and you got to make him see the psychologist. You got to make him work on his footwork and his mechanics with a QB guru. You got to bring in a vet to push him. You got to go to his strengths in play calling, and you got to get him some fucking weapons. Because the truth of the matter is, let's keep it real here. Frank's been 4 years, and Chris Ballard's been here 5 years. So it's time for some fucking winning to happen now. It's like it's time for some contending for Super Bowl to happen right now. Ain't no more time for slow and steady building. It's time to go for it in 2022. So let's figure out what we're going to do at quarterback. Either get better than Wentz or get Wentz better. Does that make sense? Help Wentz be better in every way you can do that, which means making him work on him and also getting him more to work with. Let's get it done one way or a fucking another. And let's go out in 2022, not 2023, not 2024, not 2025. Fuck 2026. Let's go out in 2022. I'm saying this to you just like I'm saying it to every coach, player, front office player, coach, personnel who listen, because I know some of y'all do, because you hit me up. Let's go out and in 2022 win another fucking Lombardi, baby. Peace.